Welcome to the Instinctive Influencers podcast, a show where influence becomes one of your tools for success. Now, here are your hosts, Brian Weber and Ed Haley.
Hi, I'm Brian.
I am Ed on mute. I mean, now I'm not on mute, but I was.
And this is the Instinctive Influencers podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
Ed, oh boy.
All right, so here we go, buddy. I've got an opening joke. I just got this from my wife. I went downstairs, I'd use the bathroom and also grab a hold of my Zoa because I like to start the day off right. So what happens when you slap Dwayne Johnson on the rear end?
I don't know. What happens?
You hit rock bottom. Yeah, Michelle decided she sat down there at the table. She's supposed to be doing homework, by the way. So do your homework. But she's down there doing homework, and she all of a sudden gets distracted watching like one of those, the dad jokes where two people sit there and tell jokes back and forth. And it's Emily Blunt who's in the Jungle Cruise with him, and they're doing back and forth. And she told that one. And Michelle was like, I have to tell Brian.
Is it in? It's probably in her notes for school.
So,
she was trying to remember it, so she wrote it down. Like in her school notes, that joke is probably in there.
Well, she's supposed to be building a slideshow for her class. It's a presentation. And I thought, well, what a great icebreaker.
I hope that's not in there.
It's not too profane. So, hey. Not at all. All right. Hey, so you didn't have one to throw back?
No, I guess I don't.
No? Okay, that's fine.
I'm just looking here, Ryan. We may have a small problem. I don't see audio coming through from my side. Do you? I don't see audio
you don't see
being recorded right now. I see yours. Okay, I don't see me. I see you.
You're being recorded, buddy.
Okay. No, I see the name. I don't see the. Yeah, I don't see the lines not moving.
No, I don't know. Hey, you know what? This will be a good one then for listeners if they're watching and they're just like,
might be one sided.
Where's Ed?
I hope you're a good lip reader.
I don't know. So those of you listening. Yeah, I'm great at. Okay. No, it says that you're recording right now. So, anyway, so you took an impromptu trip this week, my friend.
Yeah, we did. We went to Munich, or as they say in Germany, München. We went down to München and hung out in Bavaria. Yeah, that's how they say the city's name. We just, we English it up and call it Munich. But yeah, we went down there, and so it's cool because
their city.
Being a World War II guy, you go down there and you can actually see like the stuff that's been rebuilt. A lot of the buildings, the one church that I showed you, you saw a picture of the St. Michael's Church. They rebuilt a lot of that because the Allies destroyed that city. Like that city, there was like millions and millions of pounds of rubble. It took like 5 years to clean that city out to start the rebuilding process. Even the famous beer hall that I went to, the Hofbrauhaus beer hall, a lot of that was destroyed, but then they rebuilt it. And then the big thing was many of the structures that were destroyed, they decided to rebuild and make them look old and look like they did prior to all the bombing. So that was kind of a cool thing. And then it's also the beginning of World War II is in Munich, really. That is where, a bunch of former German soldiers who are upset in the 1920s, they start their uprising and they stage a coup that fails. And one of them is shot, and his name is Adolf Hitler. So he's shot in this coup attempt, and he's shipped off to prison where he writes Mein Kampf. And then he comes back, and they decide that that's going to be the like headquarters, basically, for the Nazi Party going into World War II. So lots of history there, but I won't say it's canceled, but they really kind of don't acknowledge it. You know what I mean? Like in that beer hall, the whole second floor, that's where he gave one of his most famous speeches, but they don't advertise that that hall is even up there. It's kind of, you could wander up there or you have to know about it. So interesting trip though.
No way. Yeah. I mean, I would tell you that, as you and your lovely wife do these travels, I often follow your journeys via Facebook with all the wonderful pictures. And some of those pictures, I'm just like, wow,
yeah, it's cool. It is cool.
Just amazing. So I like history like you though too. Yeah. It's pretty. You want to tell them about what you told me about this church that was built between a house and a business or something like this?
This church built, two brothers, they built it next to their residence, and then a business was on the other side. And literally the church is 30 feet wide. It's long, but it's only 30 feet wide. But when they built it, they decorated it with like just so much stuff. So the guide we use Rick Steves. He does a lot of travel guides. So we like to use his pocket travel guide because it always has a like city walk in it, whatever. And in it, he says it was basically like if you were part of your church's building committee, this is the church to go to, because you could be like, oh, that golden thing here. Oh yeah, we'll take one of those. That'll be nice. And then, like they had a golden. It was the Grim Reaper about to cut the thread of life, and it's got a little cherub there, and all gold and just shiny. And it was like, oh yeah, we'll have one of those for our church. And then the ceiling is flat, but it's done. I swear, if you stand in there, you're like, no, that's a dome. So the church building committee can be like, oh, we can save some money there. We'll take that pretend dome too. So it was just everything you could think of in a church during the Reformation period crammed into this little thing. And the brothers were architects, so they were just trying to sell their work, right? So it was pretty cool. It was really nice inside.
Oh, it's pretty neat. Now, yeah, and you'd mentioned something about yourself and Tammy were trying to do videos, but then you got in the way of another lady, and so you had to do like this.
It's funny because here a lot of people will be in your way. They see you're trying to take a picture of something, and they're not moving. But we were recording a video, and without thinking, we're recording right in front of the statue of Saint Michael battling the demon. And so we're standing there, and this lady is like looking at us, and I could see she's getting frustrated. The wife is talking. We got the recording selfie stick, and I tell my wife, I say, "Well, hey, get ready. We're gonna move. Ready?" And during the video, you can see us go like this across the thing, and the lady goes, she goes, "Danke," and then she takes her picture and she's gone. So, yeah, it was a little bit of humor in that video that will be eventually posted on our little traveling page. And we took the poodle.
Yeah. So real quick, I want to go back. You said you guys do a traveling page?
Yep.
It's just strictly traveling Haley's, right?
Because somebody commented, "Oh, you post all these pictures and videos. Why don't you do that somewhere else?" And I said, "Okay, we'll delete you, and then I'll make another page," because it was actually a decent idea. And so we did 3 videos this time. So we'll see. The beer house one is pretty good. The Hofbrauhaus one is pretty funny. We were having strudel with the poodle at the beer house. And yes, I did have a liter of beer to chase down my strudel. So, and the poodle did get to taste a drop of beer. I held my mug too low and the poodle got into it. So, yeah. So good weekend.
Oh, I see what happens.
Yeah, it was heavy. It's big. It's a liter.
That's crazy, man. Like, I mean, so this, and it's called the traveling
Haleys.
Yeah, this particular Facebook page is called the Traveling Haleys. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, so hey, y'all check that out. Check out.
Yeah, it's the gram.
Oh, it's Instagram.
Yeah, and then we put the videos on Instagram TV.
Okay, all right. So check it out. Nice. I'm definitely going to be subscribing today, my friend. So now you'll
We
have two
three, and
viewers.
we both subscribe. All right. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Hey, it's always great to hear stuff like that, man. Like you're getting out, getting to doing things, and you're enjoying yourself. And it's like you get to experience something different, right? You know what it's like here in the States. You've been to multiple countries there, so it's like you're seeing these different sides of things, right? You're starting to understand how certain cultures are built because of the multitude of cultures basically coming together. And America's kind of like that, right? We're those multitude of cultures. Ed, do you know where I'm going
we're
with
gonna
this?
do VBBN again? No.
No. We're going to talk about the 5 leadership styles, right? And these are different leadership styles that somebody can help pull into their organization, or they could create within an organization. Obviously, they need to do it naturally, but to be able to pull these in, they're going to create a certain type of culture. Much like what I was talking about there. With you'll have one side that's maybe a German culture, maybe some British culture. You may have a Middle Eastern culture. You have all these different things here in the States. That's what we are. We're just a mix of all those cultures. And for us to go over these leadership styles, I think it's going to help out listeners to understand.
Yeah, it's like a melting pot. It's you get a lot of different, and I think leadership styles. I'm going to tell you, leadership styles are the same thing.
Exactly.
There's no, this is my leadership style, and that's all there is. They have to bring several pieces together, and then some are good in time and place and then others would not work. And we're going to talk about that. I've got some notes prepared to discuss those things.
Absolutely. So let's just get started, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to go back and forth in each of these leadership styles. And I know you have a great deal of notes because you actually asked me to hold off on this so you could expand upon what we're learning from this particular article that we went on. So the 5 leadership styles you can use. All right. So you can use these, but it doesn't mean you have to stick to any particular one. All right. Basically, great leaders have emerged with particular leadership styles throughout history in providing direction, implementing plans, and motivating people. Sounds very much like the Army's definition of leadership.
It's all in there.
These can be broadly grouped into 5 different categories. So we have authoritarian leadership, participative leadership, delegative leadership, transactional leadership, and then transformational leadership. And we're going to go over each one, but we're going to answer some particular questions when we go over these. Those questions that we're going to be answering is like, what is the meaning of each leadership style that we're going to talk about? And what is the difference between the different leadership approaches? So they are the same in some ways and different in others. And then what are the advantages and disadvantages of using each of the leadership styles? So before we jump right into the first one, Ed, do you have any opening comments about it?
Yeah. Are you there, Ryan?
Sitting on a delay.
Yep. Are you there? Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, I'm here. I'm here, buddy. We got a big delay this time. It's not bad.
Well,
we'll be fine.
Let me see something here. I'm going to try to fix it. Maybe. So I do have, we're going to have to, are you editing this? I hope you're editing this one. This one's a rough one. I'm trying to make it better.
No. That's okay.
All right. So, the good thing about this one this week, and the reason I was excited about this week is because go back to my final paper for my bachelor's degree, which I'm getting ready to start my master's here in the coming months. And I did an examination of different leadership styles and talked about the leadership styles of Patton, Rommel, and Montgomery during World War I and II and how they developed. So that's kind of why I was so excited for this particular episode. And I kind of looked at how their experiences shaped those things. So had me pretty excited about this week's episode.
Nice. Yeah, I'm extremely stoked because I know this is a field of study that you and I are very involved in. I've gotten multiple degrees just dealing with leadership and understanding leadership, the philosophies of it, and then the different mechanics of it. And then I know how you feel about, like, you get in depth because you love history and studying that particular the history of those famous generals and military leaders and their style of leadership and how they went about it. So yeah, it excites me too, brother. All right, hey, why don't you do this, Ed? Why don't you start us off with that authoritarian leadership?
This is my favorite one. So authoritarian leadership style. So this style allows a leader to impose expectations and define outcomes. A one person show can turn out to be successful in situations when a leader is the most knowledgeable in the team. Although this is an efficient strategy in time-constrained periods, creativity will be sacrificed since input from the group is limited. The authoritarian leadership style is also used when team members need clear guidelines. So one of the articles that I found, and I don't remember who the author was, but it was on the NCO journal page, and it was called Mastering the Art of Dynamic Leadership. And they called this autocratic leadership. And it said autocratic leadership provides the following definition, or the article defines the autocratic leadership as: Army leaders are expected to be the decision makers and issue clear decisions, mission statements, and goals to their subordinates. Thus, the Army structure lends itself to an autocratic leadership. This leadership style worked well in environments involving life or death decision, or when the decision-making process becomes stale. So really, we're saying time and place. This could be a decent leadership style. So in combat, in the midst of a battle, something like that, might not be time to have a discussion and decide what's the best course of action. May have to be a lot more, straight down the line. It's the same thing in any organization. There's, a couple of the things that I was thinking about with this one, Brian, was maybe time constraints. It talks about time constraints. Maybe we just got a short suspense for my team in whatever organization. And at that point, maybe I don't have the freedom to discuss things in depth like we need. Maybe it has to be more of a kind of, I'm going to push the ball forward from here,
Yeah. So if we talk about these advantages and disadvantages, Ed, would you, in your own thinking and your research that you've done, would you be able to say, hey, this is the person I've seen in history that has used the authoritarian style the most, that people could examine to understand
General
more?
George S. Patton. This is one, it's a strength and weakness for him, though. So I think that on the battlefield, he was very much. Yeah. So this really plays into a couple of things. So one thing that it definitely plays into is, Patton had a philosophy of leading from the front. Well, it wasn't just because he liked to be shot at. He did like to be shot at. But he wanted to lead from the front because the battle changes in the front, right? And a leader in the rear, there's a lag between what's changing on the battlefield and me getting information to make a decision, where if I'm up front, where Patton is on the front lines, he can then dictate and make these on-the-spot decisions. And then, and then that helps make the plan. Also, he wanted his plans to be executed violently and efficiently. And that goes into kind of his autocratic. Now, he did other leadership styles, but this is one that I think was the strength and weakness of him.
Oh yeah. If I wanted to link it to someone also who was not, they weren't military related, but they were one of our presidents, I would have to, I did some research and I found, once I did research, I didn't realize this, but did you realize John F. Kennedy was more of an authoritarian leader than he was any other type? I didn't know that.
No, I didn't.
No. Yeah, so he's one of the top 7 authoritarian leader examples out there. There's a few others, but I was very curious to see that he was, and it talks perhaps one of the most famous presidents of the United States and in the world. JFK was also one of the most loved by the Americans. With years of being in politics, Kennedy was not only the one who wanted to become the president of the country, rather it was his brother who ended up dying in a plane crash. But when JFK was elected as the highest official in the U.S., the world saw him as a visionary. It was under his regime that the first man was sent to the moon, a feat that led to the subsequent space exploration. This was made possible by his authoritarian leadership, in which he was able to motivate and convince America to support the space program. So I never linked that. I never linked the fact that, because he was pushing that space program
But I think this goes into
real hard.
This is another great example of advantages and disadvantages, because, he also had another little thing during his time called the Vietnam conflict. So I don't know how authoritative he was in that, but yeah, that is interesting. So one of the things I found interesting too, Brian, when you look at the advantages, it says mistakes in the implementation of plans can be reduced through this type of leadership, right? But can it really? Because I don't think it's like guaranteed, because I think that, yeah, you're leading it and you're making sure from the front, but at the same time, you're also creating a toxic kind of environment with your subordinates where they're not getting the buy into what we're trying to accomplish. So again, I think it goes back to time and place. In the middle of a conflict, the middle of an actual battle, yeah, it'll probably work. But back in your office, I don't. I think you're really creating more of the disadvantage at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. You talked about here. So let's look at some of these advantages, though. The chain of command can be clearly emphasized, so people understand where they stand within that leadership realm. Right. That it's been defined. People know. You don't have to continuously re-engage. Who's in charge of where and whatnot. But sometimes that can be also a problem. Mistakes in the implementation of plans can be reduced, and then using an authoritarian leadership style creates consistent results. It just depends upon those that are following and things like that. You have to obviously feel what's going on there. Time spent on making crucial decisions can be reduced when it's authoritarian, because it's really kind of coming from the leader type thing. Some of those disadvantages, though, Ed.
Well,
what do you think about those disadvantages we're going to look at?
Group input is reduced dramatically. So when you do that, then that in turn goes to the next one. It reduces the group synergy and collaboration, which then kills employee creativity and innovation. So I think the disadvantages really feed off each other. But I also think that it's important to understand, you and I are very aware of getting last minute taskings, right? So we can't go to the board and brainstorm something if we have a suspense that's due tomorrow that came out today. It happens. It shouldn't happen, but it happens. So there's, those things work, but I think it's kind of neat how the disadvantage is really one just snowballs into the other. And then the final part of that snowball, right? We're at the avalanche now, is authoritarian leadership increases employee turnover rate. So now the snowball's out of control.
Yeah, exactly. So if I was going to throw my recommendations out about this particular one, I would, if there's anybody out there think, oh, you know what, I could use that, I would tell you, use it sparingly. Use it sparingly. Use it when it's needed. When decisions just can't be made, or you have, let's say you have a group of leaders and you've left it upon them to kind of get something done, and they don't move beyond, like an initial start, or they're stuck at a point. That's where you have to jump in. Just like you said, in battle, you have to, lead the charge. It's the same thing. So if they're stuck at this point, right, and they're at a plateau and they can't keep increasing production, or they can't increase and become better, that's when you jump in and you be that authoritarian. But you don't do it often, because if you do it too much, one of the key things I saw, Ed, that I thought about when it said disadvantages was a rigorous leadership style can sometimes lead to employee rebellion. You can turn the group against you.
I mean, I've seen
quickly.
it. I've seen it in the military where you maybe wouldn't think it would happen. I've seen it. Super strict, very do things my way kind of motor sergeant, in charge of maintenance. And I'm telling you, we were at the National Training Center in California, and I was a very young private, maybe, and I watched 4 mechanics take their toolbox and put them on the truck and say, I'm not doing anything else until that dude, somebody addresses how he talks to us and how he, takes away our power base. And so then it took, sergeants majors to get involved at that point, because these guys are like, I don't care. You can punish me. I'm not working. And you've got 4 of them, 4 of what, 5 mechanics, I think we had, or something like that. So yeah, I've actually seen this in the military happen.
Yeah, exactly. And so I want to back up a little bit. I have a personal story also with it of myself using too much authoritarian leadership. And this was some time back. I was a staff sergeant, and I had a couple of staff sergeants that worked in the section I was in charge of, and I had a really good friend, Chad Fritz, great guy, loved him to death. He's a Louisiana Cajun man, so he's a little different, but he was always honest with me, and I loved it about him, because he helped me become better when he would be honest. And there was one day that I was being very authoritarian, and it was almost like teetering on that little too much. Yep. And he pulled me aside and he's like, "Hey, listen, guy, I know you're in charge. I got it. That's fine. But be careful, because what you're doing is you're pulling that power base from the rest of us staff sergeants and even your sergeants when you start doing that." He's like, and he explained it to me, and I was like, hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And I listened to him. Did I go back and do it some more down like here and there sporadically? But his conversation helped me, because sometimes you have to listen to others to get better. And I would definitely say that I understand it, but I try to use it as sparingly as possible. I don't like to use it very often, because it's just, you will create enemies so fast. So for me,
when I did go through some time of doing this too, but it was more, I was still trying to figure out how to be in charge of something, like it was very early Sergeant E5 days. And I was like, yeah, I have to take this role on. And even as a staff sergeant, when I first went to work in a warehouse, there were some discipline issues. And I felt like this was the role to take initially to get past some of those discipline issues. It wasn't right, maybe not. It worked out okay-ish. So, but yeah, this is something, and I think it's a gut response. First time you're in charge of something, you're a team leader, squad leader, whatever, and then all of a sudden you want people to know, I got beat on my chest, right? Oh, I'm in charge. This is do it this way, and this is how to be done. But that doesn't always work, and we're going to see some much better leadership styles.
Absolutely. I'm glad you transitioned to that, because we're going to jump right into the participative leadership. All right. So participative leadership styles are rooted in the democratic theory. Now, I don't want anybody to get that wrong. That's not dealing with a political party. You want to look up democratic theory, do a quick Google search on it, because you'll see it's much different. However, the essence is to involve team members in the decision-making process. Team members thus feel included, engaged, and motivated to contribute. I like that. The leader will typically have the last word in the decision-making process. However, if there are disagreements within a group, it can be time-consuming to reach a consensus. So what we're saying here is this particular leadership style, it's creating the involvement of the group. Ed, when I think of this one, I think of extreme ownership. Okay. I think of decentralized command, in a sense. But what I think about is how do you get ownership from the rest of the group? If you make it their idea, like if you get them involved, they're not going to let it fail so much, right? They're going to want to be a part of it. And then sometimes you have to jump in. This is that part where I said sometimes you got to jump in and you got to make the decision because it's time consuming. However, you're getting people involved. And I mean, frankly, you know just as well as I do. The idea, just one idea from me, is nowhere as powerful as an idea from 5 people. It's 5 different ideas, because then we may be able to select which one's the best, and then take pieces of the other ones, incubate those into the one we thought the best, and we create a massively awesome idea. But so participative leadership.
So
What are your
this
thoughts, my
reminds me
man?
of the when we were at the academy. You had that red teaming handbook that we use, and it had a bunch of exercises in there for this kind of thing, like how to get a team consensus on where to eat lunch. I think was the one I used to do. It was like 5 for 25, and you'd assign point values. But so there's a bunch of different ways to do these type of things, and it does get a lot more involvement. So I went a little bit different. I went a little more military decision making. I went with course of action development, right? So my team, my staff develops these courses of action for whatever it is.
Okay.
And then they present them to me for a like a commander's decision briefing. So they say, hey, here's the 3 top courses of actions that we super important came up with. And they give them to you, and you ask some questions, and they have a little dialogue, and then you say, okay, I think that we could go with course of action number 2. So I'm making the final decision, because at the end of the day, I'm in charge. I'm the top guy that's gonna get slapped on the hand if things go sideways. But at the same time, I used my team to develop them. It's not me going and researching what's the best ways to handle something. It's my team telling me and informing me how. So that's why I kind of went to a course of action development and commander decision briefing model for participative leadership.
Well, I think you just talked about participative. So I think of MDMP, otherwise known as the military decision-making process. And I'm about to dive into that, I want to say next week or the week after at school. But it's the same way. It's not one person that's making the decision during that process. It's actually, you're gathering those experts of the different fields to fill those questions with answers from that expert to help create the most conducive course of action as possible. Try to help out. So some of the advantages of this particular one is it increases employee motivation and job satisfaction. It encourages the use of employee creativity. A participative leadership style helps in the creation of a strong team. A high level of productivity can be achieved. And I can see that, because I know from experience in using that participative leadership style, that's exactly how it's done. I can tell you when I was putting something together. It was to build the NCOPDs for my last unit, so the non-commissioned officer professional developments that we would do monthly. And I gave everybody an index card, Ed. And I told them, hey, listen, give me your top 5 things that you want to learn about, or that you would like to receive more knowledge on through our NCOPDs. And so I took all those cards, and then I sat there, man. I typed out every single one of them. I typed them all out. Then I categorized them, and then I basically looked at, okay, which ones, which was the top one, which was the next one, all that stuff. But I was able to use that. I mean, I could have just came up with all the ideas myself, but that's not. But how's that benefit them as the group? How does that create their creativity? How does that create that stronger team? You know what I mean? So, it's just
all you
one of
doing
those
is
things,
you're
brother.
brainstorming these ideas, but everybody has a say. And I remember when we used to teach brainstorming, everybody has a say, and nobody's input is foolish. Everybody's input has value to it. It may not be to you, it may seem foolish, but to that person providing it, it's got value. And then for you, the value is letting them voice their opinion, because then on the backside, you're getting a little buy-in with them, right? Like you let them speak their piece. Maybe that's not the decision that's made, but they got it out there. So those are some great advantages, Brian, but there's some disadvantages. And I think personally, the first one is, we've been talking about military decision-making process, but let's just cut off the military. Decision-making processes become time-consuming. This is true. It does take some time. You have to do some research. There is some development, right? But I do think that this one can be easily overcome with some proper planning, and you can overcome it. But this is one of those instances. This can't be a short suspense, right? If I know that we're going to have an organizational day, which for our listeners, those are like where we get together and we have some barbecue and we have some fellowship and we play some games amongst the, within the unit and the family members. But if I know that's 3 months down the line, I have time now to do the decision-making process. But if I procrastinate and now we're 3 weeks out, I don't have that time. And that's when this could become a disadvantage here. So I think the first one could be overcome. Leaders have a high probability of being apologetic to their employees. I don't know, Brian. What do you think of that one? That's, I mean, yeah.
I think what it is, it turns into, I think that one is like, if I have to step in and make the decision, I say, hey, sorry guys, I had to make a decision on this. I know you guys were you were picking this, but I had to make a quick decision. I think that's where maybe that's where we're getting at with the disadvantages is you may have to apologize for the fact that you stepped on that decision,
or the ones that weren't selected, right?
Like create
I'm all in. Mine is the best possible course of action, and we go the other way.
Yeah,
and it's like, hey, and again, you pretty much did it perfect. Like, hey, not going that direction. I'm sorry for that, but it was a good idea. It's just we think this is the better route. Communicate. I mean, this one can happen everywhere, right? And every one of these leadership styles, communication failures can sometimes happen. I think the danger is if you just say to that same person, "Yeah, we're not doing it that way. We're going with this." You could cause some ill feelings there, right? Rather than saying, "Hey, it was a good idea, but we're going with this one because it was the consensus, or because it made more sense financially, or whatever it is." That is a better way to do it. But if you just go, "Yeah, we're not going with your idea," you could be making them feel small, like talking down to them. So, security issues. This is OPSEC.
Very much.
Security issues can arise because of transparency and information sharing. So, too much information out there about whatever the project is could cause some security concerns. Corporate America has that, right? They have, they have people trying to steal ideas from other companies. And if we're oversharing, that could become a very big challenge and dangerous, right? And then, yeah, exactly. Everybody wants
Especially
to
in the tech
whatever
business.
Apple's doing next. Face, I don't know. Maybe your breath opens your phone. I don't know. But everybody wants that technology. Yeah. Could you imagine if your breath had to open your phone, but you just like ate at a seafood restaurant? Anyway, but and then poor decisions. And poor decisions can be made if employees are unskilled. I think this goes back to talent management. I'm sorry. I think it goes back to we've talked about before. Because if you put them in that position, then maybe you poorly manage the people on your staff. Maybe you misread your talent. And that's why you have somebody unskilled making poor decisions. So maybe you should look back this way, right? So many disadvantages can overcome with some good plan. I mean, I'm a king of procrastination, man. So that time consuming, I really have to take into consideration, Brian. What are your thoughts on these disadvantages?
Yeah. When it comes to the disadvantages, the one that sticks out to me the most, Ed, is that very last one you spoke of. It's the poor decisions can be made if employees are unskilled. And so that's where it comes down to is the right leader doing that talent management, doing that survey of what I've got here at the table. Do I have the wrong people leading the wrong sections or the wrong groups? You have to be extremely sensitive to that, because if I put, let's just say, Ed, I put an aviator in charge of a supply, like there could be some real big ramifications because they don't understand all of the dynamics of it, or how about I do this? I put a supply guy in charge of an aircraft phase maintenance.
Easy.
they have no idea how it works. So how can I expect them to come up with read a book, right? No, but they wouldn't know like estimates on time frames and just different stuff that you wanted to get into. So I think that's the key piece of that participative leadership. I did a little bit of research, because I'm going to give one for each one of these famous people who use these types of leadership styles. This participative leadership style, Richard Branson. Guy just went in space. He uses that's his primary leadership style that he actually talks about and he enjoys using. He says because it creates the most bang for his buck when it comes to that creativity and building all these different things that he does. So that's pretty interesting, man. It's pretty interesting.
Good example of somebody using it though. Somebody like that. I mean, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I can always go military, but we'll just stick with that for now.
Absolutely. Hey, move us on to old delegative leadership, my friend.
You gave me this one on purpose. So I had to say this word.
I can't. Hey, actually, I was sitting there looking at it, Ed, and I was like, man, I hope he
delegative leadership
I don't know how.
is also known as laissez-faire leadership. A delegative leadership style focused on delegating initiative to team members. This can be a successful strategy if team members are competent, take responsibility, and prefer engaging in individual work, talent management. However, disagreements among members may split and divide a group, leading to poor motivation and low morale. So one of the keys for me, Brian, before you get into disadvantages, right?
Woo.
When I think of delegative leadership, I think of, I'm the platoon sergeant. I tell my squad leaders, hey, go to the motor pool and make sure it's ready for closeout. That's it. That's all I'm telling them. They're going to go do it. I'm letting them have the ball. They need to know what needs to be done to get the motor pool ready for closeout. The catch to this delegative leadership is if I just say to the first sergeant, okay, motor pool's ready for closeout, but I didn't go down there and verify anything. And then he goes down there and the motor pool is just trashed, right? Famous saying, inspect, not expect. So I would expect the NCOs to go down there and clean it out. I'm not saying go behind them and look at everything, but go down there and do a quick inspection, just a quick look. Boom, drip pans, whatever the thing. Couple of vehicles maybe, and then say, okay, that's enough for me to know that they did the job. And then when I tell the first sergeant, hey, first sergeant, it's ready for closeout, then I'm confident that when he goes down there to also inspect, not expect, he'll also find the same thing I did, that it's good to go. So I think that's one of the things with delegated leadership. You can delegate, but you need a way to follow up, whatever that is, to make sure whatever it is you delegated actually happened.
So Ed, when you said that, you talked about inspect, not expect, you said inspect, not expect, right?
Yeah, right. I was like, man,
did I switch that up? Anyways, so what I think is what I would definitely say in that situation, you really have to give intent. If you don't give the right intent of what needs to be done, your expectations are not going to be met anyway. So that's why you have to push that, and just inspect to make sure they hit your intent. I don't want to. So one of my favorite leaders, I've talked about him before, Joshua Bryan, man, he is one of those guys. He'll tell you, I don't want to tell you how to bake the cake. I just need you to bake the cake and give it to me. All right. Let me eat the cake. I want to taste the cake. I don't want to sit there and tell you how to put the eggs in, put the flour in, add the chocolate, add this, all these. I just want to be able to enjoy the cake at the table. But if I have to, I can break it down and we can learn how to bake a cake together.
Yeah.
But just delegative enough, I just bake the cake. That's all I need you to do. Right. And that's what I think of. Give intent, hey, just bake me a cake. That's all I need from you. Okay. I love it. You got to, maybe I should have had him on the show before I left Colorado too. I could always call him and get him on the show. I guarantee it. But it was that weird subordinate leader relationship. I didn't want to kind of put him in that situation or me in that situation. So I was like, I'll wait. But maybe if I can get promoted, then it'll be like peer to peer, right? So, but yeah, it's just, I would, and the reason I say this, because I would love him to tell that story on our show. It's one of those ones that you're just in awe of. Kind of, I've told it before, like, you know, the whole, there's how many people in the organization, if we all do the same, if we all do one good thing, that's this much, you know, good things done. So let's talk about, exactly. Let's talk about advantages, man.
Well, there are some.
What do we see as an advantages of this particular one?
I'm skipping around here, but I really like the innovation and creativity is highly valued. I think, like I said, my example, hey, go make sure the motor pool's ready for closeout, and then I need to give my intent. But then they can go down there and use their own, you know, they can think creatively and critically and say, okay, well, what needs to be done to make the motor pool be closed out? And then it lets them do that. And then if they come up to an obstacle, I want them to, you know, I've delegated to them. So there's this obstacle, and instead of saying, hey, what do you want me to do about this? I want them to be the ones to come up with a way, innovative way to overcome whatever that obstacle is. Oh, the one Humvee is it's down. It's down. It's not able to move on its own, but I need to get it online with the rest. How do I do that? You know what I mean? Like, oh, let me grab a couple of soldiers, ask them to help me, boom, 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 and get out of your comfort zone. And I think that's why I like that one. Innovation and creativity is highly valued in delegative leadership.
Yeah. I love the fact that it creates a positive work environment too. Because you pretty much make the force feel as if though they're running the show in a sense, and they will take even more ownership on it than
and you're helping the unit, because one day they are going to run the show. So you're helping the organization, whether it be the battalion you're in or a company or maybe just the army, but you're teaching them lessons that's going to develop them so that you make the organization better. So the organization, it's an advantage for them too.
You know, and I see that, Ed. I kind of see that as, am I training the people that work within my organization to take my job? And I think that delegative style helps with that. And if you can take that one and mix it with a participative one, you're really going to create this different type of environment.
It's cookie cutter, man. There's one style for each person, right? Yeah, no, you absolutely.
Just one.
In the words of
stick to one, and that's it.
Anna Kendrick and Pitch Perfect. It's a mashup. Leadership style is a mashup. We're gonna have a great mashup here.
I can't believe you just quoted Pitch Perfect. Films. We're definitely reaching out to a different type of audience now, aren't we, Ed?
All right, Brian. So what's the disadvantages?
So, hey, so command responsibility is not adequately defined. I don't know if I can agree with that completely. It is clearly defined because you're delegating. You're saying, hey, this is the person in charge. This is the one running this situation. And then when you, like you said, inspect, don't expect. If I'm inspect, I mean, come on, they know.
Yeah,
I have a hard time with that.
I feel like it's
I really do.
Is it so you have a little more experience because of your academics? Is it maybe a civilian thing but this paper is written by a military guy, right? So I mean, we all know in the military, ultimately the commander is responsible ultimately at the company level, right? Like we know it's just a known.
And so
that's why I mean,
I think you're right.
Yeah, that's a weird one. Delegative leadership creates difficulty in adapting to change. That's a weird one too. To me, I think I'm making it more easy to adapt to change by creating these leaders who are innovative and creative. I mean, I can see,
Yeah.
but
Yes. But and the reason you're doing that is you're creating that ownership. So they want to own it, and they're going to adapt to that change because it's like, crap, this is my idea. If I let this fumble, I'm done, or they're not going to give me another one to run. So they're going to make the changes needed. Now, maybe what it is you put that person in charge of it, and then you have 3 or 4 other people who don't adapt to the change very well. Now, that could be the instance, right? So it's, I guess, once again, talent management it falls into.
Yeah, it's weird. So what we have next, Brian, is transactional leadership. And I'm
yeah, before we go to that, we don't want to go to that
Did I
yet
miss
because I got
something?
I got a good one. Participative. Yeah. I got a good example, and I think what we're going to do, with this delegative leadership, we're going to kind of see when I give this example who was a good delegate leader. I did not really think about this so much until I read it. Ronald Reagan was a delegative leader, Ed. Reagan was mocked during his election campaign for his inexperience in day-to-day politics and government management. However, when he arrived in office, he made up for these deficiencies by entrusting key economic positions to industry leaders from Wall Street. In addition, he is remembered for assigning an unprecedented amount of power to his chief of staff and other secretaries. And while Reagan is somewhat controversial historical figure, he can certainly be remembered as an influential delegative leader. And I do, now that I read that, I remember that, he had people in positions that were, they were very much in charge of that position. He wasn't telling it, he was getting back brief. He was helping them through things like leadership wise, but he allowed those experts in that field to kind of run that field. And, people may disagree.
I
he was one
I thought
of my
it was a pretty solid example you had.
Also,
I thought it was a pretty good example, Brian. I didn't think of it either. I mean, and in that situation with those guys, they have to put people in those key positions because he can't know every aspect. You know what I mean? So even with us, we have to have people in certain positions. You as the first sergeant, right? You're running an aviation company. The aviation maintenance side, but like you said earlier, you don't know the supply side as well. So you have to have that supply sergeant that you and your commander trust. You have to have that motor sergeant who's responsible for the maintenance of your vehicles, your wheeled vehicles that y'all trust. So because you can't know it all. Now you can know a little bit about several things, but not all of it. And I think that's where that delegative leadership comes in.
Yeah, I would tell you so far, and I'm gonna actually give you my top 5 out of these 5. Like I'm putting them in order as we go. I know this one sits pretty good in there. Actually, it's pretty high up on my list.
I was not prepared to do this, so I may have to wing it.
No, that's okay. You don't have to.
We have to wing it.
You may have to wing it.
So now we're ready to make the transition to the transaction, as in transactional leadership. But I'm going to go a little bit off script here, Brian. So I mentioned earlier the article from the NCO Journal, Mastering the Art of Dynamic Leadership, which you should include in the show notes and probably give a little browse to. It's not a long article. But in that article, it had this to say about transactional leadership. It is known as the telling style of leadership, focuses on structure, results, rewards, and penalties. Leaders provide subordinates with goals, establish project checks, provide performance reports, and motivate them with rewards based on a recognized system. So I just really like the way it was worded to, on the journal. So that's why I started with that instead of the article we're using today. The article we're using today says transactional leadership styles use transactions between leaders and their followers, rewards, punishments, and other exchanges to get the job done. The leader sets the clear goals, and team members know how they'll be rewarded for their compliance. This give and take leadership style is more concerned with efficiency, following established routines and procedures, than making a transformational change to an organization. So this is a couple examples. So one thing I used to love to do with my soldiers is a go home list, especially on Friday. You're getting off early usually, and I would just come in and say, these are the things I need done by the end of the day, and then the how is on them. These are the things I need to get done because we're going to the field next week, so they have to all be done today. When they're done, you guys can get a safety brief and be released. Boom. I made a deal with them. They can go home early if they get the work done, right? So you kind of made that deal with them. The other part of this, that's one of my favorite things. So it talks about rewarding soldiers, for their actions, right? So very famously, it leads to some very negative incidents, but very famously, General Patton would actually go to the field hospitals during World War II, and he was pinning medals on soldiers' chests in the hospital, rewarding them for what they had done. So building that bond with these soldiers, and this is why that he was known as such a aggressive leader. I guess there's a different word that he was called, but his men were super proud to serve him. Where if somebody says to you, "Hey, Brian, who are you serving with?" and you say, "Oh, I'm in 4th Cab, 4th Infantry Division," but his men would say, "Oh, I'm with Patton," because they had that bond. And when the bigger a jerk this guy was, the more he had a following from his soldiers. But it was stuff like this. Recognize them for what they did. He also used to fine them for stuff like not having their helmet shiny enough. So there's also the punishment side of that for that transactional give and take leadership. You do what you're supposed to, I'll take care of you. So this is one.
Yeah.
This is probably high on my list if I had taken time to make one, but I missed the staff meeting when you said we were going to do that. But this would probably be high. I like the idea of, I take care of you, you take care of me, the whole thing. I've always kind of liked that. And then I have a flip side to this after you provide your input, Brian.
Yeah. What you just talked about there, like you get something for something. And what it does talk about in our article about what advantages, it talks about creating specific, measurable, and time-bound goals that are achievable for employees. I would also refer our listeners back to our episode on SMART goals, because that's pretty much what a SMART goal is. That specific, measurable, achievable, I can't remember the R. I think it was relative, and then time bound. Yeah, I have to look at it again. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, we have to look at that, and I do like that idea of like, hey, listen, if you get this done, this is what your award is.
Okay.
The only problem I see with that, though, Ed, the big problem I see with that is if I say, all right, I need you to get this area cleaned by this time, and then you can leave early. Well, what if they go into it and they only do half the job right? Let's say we had to do a police call. You mentioned the motor pool, a police call of a motor pool. Those of you know, that's basically walk around, pick up trash or anything that shouldn't be on, there, and then throwing it away, just making the area clean. Well, let's say we did a police call, but they only did of the areas that were visible that I could see just standing in certain angles. And they didn't realize at the end that inspect, not expect, that I walk around and I look behind containers or vehicles that are just sitting parked way back in the back. And then I noticed that, hey, there's all this trash here. Well, they're going to be upset when I say, no, you ain't done yet. You've got all this stuff. And then that motivation may creep down just a little bit. Oh man, we still got to go after it. Yeah, of course. But I think that comes down to, listen, when I say, hey, you're doing this, maybe I explain, I expect all the areas within the confines of this fence to be cleaned up. So make sure you're looking behind vehicles, it's giving those specific instructions to help. And that tells leaders create specific, measurable, time-bound goals. So we have to be specific. Sometimes we may expect something, but because we expected it, we didn't say it. We were thinking it, but we didn't say it, and that could be a problem. And you're going to create a little bit of
that's actually very true,
demotivation.
Brian. I didn't think of it like that, but yeah, sometimes we expect that when I say do a police call, they know we mean all the trash. And you definitely can see the air come out their sails when you say, okay, well, you didn't do it right this time. So what we're going to do is I need you to do another police call of the
Yep.
whole motor pool, and I'll be back in an hour. And then you can see the wind come right out of those old sails. But over time and space, they get to know you, just like we got to know
Yep.
them. They get to know you, and they know, well, Master Sergeant's not playing around. Like if he says police call, he means if it didn't grow, pick it up. So then the next time they're going to get that time off because they're going to do the job right because they know I'm not playing around. So that kind of plays into it. So this is one of the things I found when I did my paper, Brian. This was a flip side kind of. This is something I found very interesting when you talk about transactional leadership. So Field Marshal Montgomery said, the success of a commander does not arise from following rules or models. It consists in an absolutely new comprehension of the facts of the situation and all the forces at work. So he just kind of was a little bit different thought process to the whole thing. And maybe it plays a little more in some of the other leadership styles. But he just basically was saying, like, following these rigid rules, like we talk about with transactional leadership, um, not always the key to success. But that's also goes back to us talking about we want people who think creatively and are innovative, because then they realize, like, here's the rules that we normally would do this thing with, but we've got this issue and we can stray from the rules and correct that issue, and then come back into line with whatever the rules or model is. So just innovation. I mean, I think that's one of the things I've taken the most out of the research for this week and the reading for this week is the importance of creativity and the importance of innovation in a leader. It makes a huge difference.
Yes, definitely. All right. We'll talk about empathy is not valued. Do you think in that transactional leadership that empathy is not valued?
From a person who does not do a great job at empathy, I guess I can see where
Whatever, man. You do.
I mean, any of these really right scenario, right situation, right time and space. Yeah, I can make it where empathy is not valued in that particular instance. But in others, maybe not so much. Maybe the author, when they wrote the advantages and disadvantage, they meant to write them with the fluidity of leadership styles. It's not a perfect fit. Sometimes everything fits just right, but sometimes you got like a thing that's not lined up. So maybe that's kind of why he says these, because we didn't agree with the last two disadvantages in the previous one. And now here we are again, kind of looking at them like, maybe, like for me, I look at the transactional leaders create more followers than leaders among employees. And I say that depends on how your task is communicated. If you're giving them that task and you leave some room for the leader to determine the how, right? Like going back to Sergeant Major Bryant, if you just tell them I want a cake, and then you let them figure out what type of cake, when, what it's going to taste like. You just tell them, hey, I want a cake and I want a cake at 1700 hours today. And then the rest is up to that leader. Then I would argue that you're creating leaders. You're creating people who think like leaders. So that would be my kind of, and that's why I say maybe that's what the author's idea was, is there is that movement that can happen amongst these advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah. Yeah. I think where you're getting there, Ed, I think he took out of the equation of meshing more than one of these leadership styles together, because I can definitely tell you, looking at this, using delegative with transactional, meshing those two together. So giving somebody that they are in charge of it, and this is what happens. These are the rewards, these are the punishments for it. I think you are creating I mean, you probably are creating more followers than leaders because you're only allowing one person to be the leader at the time. However, you don't have to pick the same person all the time. You could change it up, and
because
and
then you're going to wear out.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we've talked about before. We've probably both done it as young junior leaders, but you get that person, and you can count on them, and you just ride them till the wheels fall off. And then when the wheels fall off, you're like, I don't understand what happened, but you played a role in breaking that person down because you didn't use other people. So, yeah, I think we've talked about that before on the show.
Absolutely, yeah. And I just had it, and I can't find where there we go. So I found what some say are some renowned transactional leaders. They say Bill Gates, Norman Schwarzkopf, Vince Lombardi, and then Howard Schultz. So he's the one from Starbucks. But those are transactional leaders. But I read something a little further down, Ed, that I felt was interesting, and I think you'll like this. It is assumed that transactional leaders often have been seen following Maslow's theory of hierarchy needs. I think, ooh, that makes sense. Here, the leader concentrates on the psychological satisfaction and other basic necessities of his followers to give their best performance. So basically using that psychological factor within it to get the best performances possible out of them. And I think using Maslow's theory of hierarchy needs, that I think if you're understanding that and you're using that effectively, you're a little bit higher thought process than most people or most leaders would be.
Yeah,
because that's some in-depth stuff.
That was in the article. How did I miss that? Oh
no, it's a separate one.
Yeah, Brian.
I did some side research.
Man, did I
no. I did some.
I was driving. We were riding back from Munich, and I'm taking notes. I'm hot spotting, and I'm reading, and I was like, man, did I just because I'm telling you, I was fighting a Z monster all the way back from Munich today. So I was like, maybe I blacked out and fell asleep. I don't remember that part.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now that makes sense.
All right. So I can see some of those things like the Vince Lombardi. I really can see that type of transactional leaderships within his leadership style.
I think a lot of coaches
when he led the Green Bay Packers.
I can see that from a lot of coaches.
All right, so
but you think about it, Brian. We both played sports.
Definitely.
So if you play better, you get more time on the court, on the field, whatever. If you play worse, we flip. And you sit on the bench. So that's a transactional leadership there, just in basic coaching. Is the better you play, the more you get of course, nowadays, everybody plays 10 minutes exactly. I don't care that you haven't missed a shot, Anyway.
Yeah, I can see now as you say that. I noticed my football time increased, and I remember my basketball time decreasing. It's because I wasn't very good at it. So I was like a big ogre on the basketball court, man. So, now, hey, so funny story. There was this one time I got to go in. It was in the varsity game. I was on the team, and I'm in, and I didn't make it was a quick transition. Somebody stole the ball. I think it was a guy named Tommy Waterman. As a matter of fact, it was, and he throws it to me, and I'm
just let it go,
like around 3-point line, around I was near the 3-point line, but about to hit the foul line, and he throws it, and I'm like, oh, I am dunking this, and it's gonna be awesome. I go up, I come up, I go hardcore behind me, and I go to hit it, brick city, bro. And I held onto the rim. So not only did I brick it, but I also got a technical. So if there's anybody from high school that remembers that, I remember it specifically. See? I got pulled out of the game.
Transactional leadership.
That. Coach Reed was not having
play.
It. Yeah.
You go to the bench.
Yeah. All I had to do was lay it up. And I remember somebody in the crowd go, dunk it. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm about to throw down. Like it. Hey, you know, when people talk about like the slow motion in
That was
life, like
yours?
that's one of those instances where it's like I'm coming up and I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be good, and then halfway through I brick it, and like as I'm hitting the brick, I'm like, oh, that bricked, and then I'm hanging onto the rim and I'm watching the ball go up and over behind me, and I'm like,
Oh
oh
my!
no, everything's
And it was
slowed
at this
down.
point that your
So,
career transformed.
oh, funny. And yes, you're no longer very good at. Well, I was never good at basketball. I was horrible at it, man. All right, so hey, we're moving on to transformational leadership. This is our fifth and
Yeah.
final before we close out the show. Transformational leadership styles. The leader
Ooh.
inspires their followers with a vision and then encourages and empowers them to achieve it. The leader also serves as a role model for the vision. Some of the advantages with this, we're talking about it. It leads to a lower employee turnover rate. Transformational leadership places high value on corporate vision. So we're taking that overall vision and we're basically putting it on a pedestal and we're saying, hey, this is us. This is how we live. And then you hold to it. High morale of employees is often experienced. It uses motivation and inspiration to gain the support of employees. It is not a coercive approach to leadership. It places high value on relationships. So, when I think about this, right, Ed, I think about that transformational, and then I think about the advantages. One of our sister services, I think, uses that big time, and they use it because they have a lot of they're ground in their heritage. I think the Marine Corps is very much a transformational leadership style in general, right? Because you think about it, like Chesty Puller. I think we've talked about Chesty on here before. That guy he created this vision, and people, they would just follow him blindly practically into battle. He would stand up like on the berm. I think Jocko read different passages and you and I both talked about, we've listened to the episodes where Jocko goes all through Chesty and then he goes through Chesty's son, but talking about like Chesty would stand on a berm with his pistol, just shooting at the enemy, not caring if a bullet was going to hit him. And then others would follow behind him. And it's because, of that vision that he created.
Yeah,
man.
no,
That's
we
a
did a
big
whole
thing.
episode on vision, but yeah, I agree. This is so for me, this one here is just because it talks about, encourages and empowers them to achieve it. The leader serves as the role model for the vision. Brian, that is an Army tradition. That is just leadership by example. And I think that this is the reason it's an Army thing is because this is something that can work when the environment changes. This is something that can be, flexible and can move with whatever the given situation is. Excuse me. And then from that same article I used for my paper, it basically says this is where ideas flow freely and subordinates are encouraged to provide solutions. But it doesn't work in the initial development decision-making period where there is little to no structure to support the team. So the example that I have for this is we're going to go back to the book. So this is a book that you have, Brian, by Porter Williamson, who was the judge advocate at the Desert Training Center for General Patton. And it's from Principles of Life and Leadership. And General Patton demanded obedience, but not blindness. He never objected to anyone opposing his plans if there was a good basis for the altered plan. And that, to me, is what transformational leadership's all about. Like, yeah, if you can tell me why that's the better route, let's do it. And I think that this is very rooted in when we talk about leadership philosophy, command philosophies. I think that this type of leadership style is very rooted in those things as well, Brian.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would definitely say that this is another good one. You have to think about that motivation, inspiration.
Yeah.
Those are key elements. You really got to have those. So you have to know your people. you can't just use this on a brand new group of people. You've got to know them, or you've got to ingrain something in that organization first before you can just
100%.
start using this.
Well,
Right?
real quick before you do that,
Let's look
I
at some
have to do this. So you said you're talking about
disadvantages.
it uses motivation and inspiration
Okay.
to gain and support employees. So here's a direct quote from my paper, my quote, not somebody else's. Yeah, I said, when subordinates feel like they have a dog in the fight, they gain confidence in their commander and their loyalty increases as a result. And I think that plays into that understanding motivation and the inspiration to gain the support of your employees. They have a dog in the fight now. This is my, whatever. And that ownership, extreme or not, that ownership is what drives them to success, I feel like. So what are some disadvantages, Brian?
Yes. Well, let's look at, we got leaders can deceive employees. That one, I think you can fall into that with a lot of them. Yeah. Consistent motivation and constant feedback may be required. So that's that you have to continuously be engaged. You gotta be hitting those, you gotta hit different waypoints. You gotta constantly be, measuring, doing your battlefield circulation. We've talked about it before. You've got to constantly be measuring by being involved. You got to be engaged. This is not a leadership style for somebody who wants to just say, all right, get this done and walk away and then come back and check on it a day or two later. No, you've got to constantly be engaged with this. Tasks can't be pushed through without the agreement of employees. Right? So it's one of those things where they've got to be, you got to get them hook, line, and sinker. You got to get them to buy into it first. Yes, exactly. Transformational leadership can sometimes lead to the deviation of protocols and regulations. And now that so people may go outside the norm in it or what is considered legal, illegal. So now we have to think about, all right, am I, legally, morally, and ethically correct in this? Am I doing things that I'm, are they deviating? And if they deviate, man, it's hard to reel people back in once they've gone outside that, into the gray area or what the wrong area. It's harder to reel them back in because it's way easier to do it this way. Why don't we just change the rules? Well, because maybe the rules are illegal, immoral, and unethical. You never know.
I mean, and then it plays right into that deceive employees, right? Transformational leadership, the deviation of protocols and regulations and the deception. And I mean, it does paint a pretty nasty picture for this leadership style, but then there's also other highs for this leadership, like the relationships and the getting the buy-in. So there's some really low lows, and then there's some really high highs for this type of leadership style. But I think at the end of the day, it goes into why these leadership styles can mesh, and how you can use pieces of each. And these aren't all inclusive. These are just the ones in the article. Because I can tell you, when for the paper I wrote, servant leadership was another leadership style, which is a newer thing that we use in the military. So, and we've actually talked about it on the show. So there's some other ones out there, but yeah, they have to be interchangeable. They have to be able to mesh to the situation. I think the situation drives the leadership style to some extent. I think the days of having the yeller screamer guy, the first style we talked about, those days are kind of behind us, unless a certain situation. But so with these 5, Brian, what do you think?
I will tell you, I found a decent example for this one. I'm not sure if you're familiar with who Peter Drucker is. I have a couple of his books. He's big time into the whole, leadership realm and management, and just doing things that make sense. But this is what I found was Peter Drucker was a transformational leader working as a management consultant and professor primarily. He predicted the rise of Japan's economy as a global power, the age where people would need to learn in an effort to keep their jobs or advance in their career, and the value of marketing and innovation. Drucker coined the term knowledge worker. He transformed the industry's understanding of what a worker would be in the future, as well as what entrepreneurship would entail. He saw this as a vehicle of innovation, entrepreneurship was not just about high technology. It was also a vehicle for change in behavior, attitude, and values. Yeah, that to me, that speaks to the idea of motivating, inspiring people. All right. And just kind of creating that. So, with these 5, Ed, I went ahead and I did a 1 through 5 on it, and then I picked what I like the best. But what you said there, when you said you have to mesh, I feel like as if someone who is growing as a young leader, and if they're listening to this show, I would tell them right now, learn at least these 5, and maybe also servant leadership, because I think that one's a great one. Put them in your tool bag, and then know how to employ them or pull them out and use them as a tool when it's needed. Don't stick to just one. You have to, and I think that's the difference between today's type of leaders versus, let's say, 50 years ago. They were very rigid. They stuck to a certain pathway, right? And I think this particular article, or just understanding these leadership styles, I think it meshes well with also reading the article, The Toxic Leadership in the U.S. Army by Colonel Denise Williams. Because then you understand, you can look at that and you can say, all right, I don't want to push this authoritarian too far, because then it made me look like a rigid leader. Excuse me. Or I don't want to push this narcissist leader too far, because it may, or I don't want to be a narcissist leader, because then, within my authoritarian style, because then people will stop following, so it's like looking at it as, I have to know what is the right tool for the right instance. I said it in class the other day. We were talking about something, and I said, hey, I can give you the tool. I can give you a hammer all day long, Ed. I can give you a hammer. But unless you know how to use that hammer and hit the nail on the head, I mean, I can show you, but I can't do a hand over hand with a hammer and teach you how to hammer things effectively. We could sit there and go tap, 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 but how long is that going to take? I can show you, but you've got to pick it up at some point and run with it. So I can only give you tools.
I think
you have to learn how to use them.
So one of the things towards the end of the article, under the developing your leadership style, that super stood out to me is the last sentence of the first paragraph. Leadership is not about providing a specific response in a particular situation. It's about authentically using your natural leadership strengths to inspire and motivate others. And I think that goes into what you're saying. Like, again, you learn the techniques, but the hardest part to me, especially I'm thinking about when I was a junior leader, I think the hardest part to me would be to figure out how to match them, how to match that authoritarian style with what situation is that good in, or what situation am I in now, and what leadership style works best. But I do think with experience and over time in your career, you start to become more instinctive with it, and you understand more quickly the authoritarian is not going to work for the soldier who just had a family member pass away. That's not going to work. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's that development, that sense of being human, that really go a long way, Brian. So let's hear your top 5.
All right. So right before my last 5, my top 5, let me give you something real quick though, because I got reached out to via email. I don't know if I told you, but I may have.
Yeah, I did.
No, I didn't. So Rick Williams reached out to me, and he was talking about that they're about to do some mentorship. Did you get it too? The mentorship?
Yes, I have something to follow on with after you're done.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what I was going to read here, though, it talks about leadership coaching is another way to identify your leadership strengths and weaknesses. We're gonna later down the road, we're gonna, we did one some time back. We did mentors and mentees. I think we're gonna explore that subject a little bit better to help really define it, to really just to make sure it's understandable. And then how do we do this? It's one of those things. It could fall to the wayside, and it may just be something that people throw lip service to.
Yeah.
And instead, we need to be doing. And leadership coaching is one of those things within that mentor-mentee type thing, where if you have a mentor that can help you identify those strengths and weaknesses, then you're able to say, okay, but it's also, Ed, it's about being able to listen to that criticism or that feedback and not taking it with it, like as if, oh, he's a knock on me as a no, maybe that person actually wants you to be better, and they want to, and it's not everything is wrong with you. Maybe it's just they say, hey, there's these areas you could work upon to become better. And that's why I think that whole leadership coaching is a critical thing. I'll run, I know you're going to bring that up, but let me run down through my top 5. So if I were to go with my top 5 and how I like to employ them, participative is always first for me. I enjoy participative because it really helps me also not only get multiple people involved, but also it helps me to measure their abilities, to know where their strengths and weaknesses. I may try to put the right person in a position and then realize later, oh, wow, this is not for them. This is not their forte. The next in line to me is delegative. I find that delegative you're creating leaders out of delegative leadership styles. I enjoy it. Number 3 is transformational, because I love the motivation factor, the inspiration, the creating visions, and then having that unified goal. I love those. That to me it's just kind of ingrained in me with that. Then I go with transactional. I think transactional is nice, but sometimes I think it gets in the way of that overall goal, because what happens is people become too focused on their reward,
comes an expectation,
and not really the outcome. You know what I mean? And exactly. And then finally, I like to use authoritarian sparingly, very sparingly, because I think that's that you get over there behind that berm, shoot, that type of thing. Instead of telling people what to do every day, all day, it turns into more like, well, I am the common enemy that I don't want to be. There's 2 different types of common enemies. There's the one that, there's the one that you want to be that's competitive, right? But not the common enemy that everyone hates because you're a jerk. And you don't have to be a jerk just because you're a leader.
Well, I'm not going to do that.
So that's what I had, brother. What you got?
Rob myself and maybe not have them in order, because I wouldn't give them the due thought. I do hope my wife listens, though, because I can tell you the one I least like to deal with. I don't like authoritarian leaders. And so here at home, well, I hope she listens to authoritarian leader and realizes I just don't like that one. She'll recognize herself in it. But
is she an authority?
No, I'm just kidding. She's not. She's a sweetheart. I was just messing with her. See if this is how I test when she listens or not. I go, oh, do you like what I said about you on the show? No, I'll say, do you like what I said about you on the show? And she'll say, oh, yeah, that was so sweet. And I'll be like, really? Wasn't sweet, though? So first thing, let's go back to the Bearded Ninja. I also got the email from the Bearded Ninja. And he very passively pointed out my error. So I owe the listeners an apology last week. When we were talking about being competent and consciously competent and unconscious, I referred to it as the Johari window, and that is not correct. It is actually a type of learning model called the thought freeze model. I encourage you to go check that out. But he didn't say, hey, that was the wrong thing. But he also sent me a slide of the correct model, and I was like, "Okay, I get it. I worked with him long enough. I could take a hint from the Bearded Ninja, and because he's frightening, it's not like I'm going to say anything back." So anyway, I do owe the listeners an apology for that. And then, but the listeners,
I think I just saw him looking in your window.
He does know Germany, so
he's behind you.
That was my one thing I wanted to talk about, Brian. This has been a show and a half. One more thing for the listeners. So I encourage the listeners to check us out on YouTube at the Instinctive Influencers YouTube page. Give us a subscription. Go ahead and subscribe. Give me a subscription. You subscribe, and then give a thumbs up and a couple of comments. I'd like to see an increase in our numbers there. Also, check us out on all social media platforms, such as Instagram and Facebook at Instinctive at 101 Influencers, and then also check out the webpage that we have, the Instinctive Influencers podcast webpage. I don't know. I haven't been on it in a couple of weeks. I don't know if Brian's made any changes, but if you put in the comments that you'd like to see some changes to the website, then that puts the pressure on Brian, and he has to make updates to the website. So you could go ahead and do that as well. But check out the website and definitely get involved.
Yes.
Drop some comments, drop some suggestions. We did have, I know, at least I saw a listener responded to last week's show and added another C to the list of our C's last week. Yeah, so that was fantastic, and it was a good one. I forget. Oh, it was off the top of my head. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm old, but it was a good one, and it was, yeah. So yeah, check us out. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate you continue to go to YouTube and check us out. So yeah, that's what do you think? Yeah, that's it, Brian.
No, actually, I wanted to throw that shout out to Marcus Murta. Murta, I actually just recently met him, and here, and he's one heck of a guy. He's a great dude. I like interacting with him. He seems to be, to me, I feel like he's one of those guys that he is very much of putting people before himself. Actually, you remember my old hybrid giant bike that I had?
Yeah.
It was the straight barred one. Yeah, I gave it to him. I let him have it because I wasn't riding it anymore, and I enjoy riding my road bike. I was like, and this dude wanted he wanted a bike. He was gonna buy one. I was like, nah, dude, don't buy one. I'll just give you one. So, and he is an avid listener. Ed Marcus Murta is an avid listener. He listens almost all the time. He says he listens to us while he's working out.
I'm gonna send him an autograph.
So I'm gonna send him like an autograph. Man. He can listen to podcasts and work out. Did you hear that, Marcus? You're getting an autograph sticky note,
budget
friend.
Right now. So
yeah,
autograph sticky note from Marcus.
We don't have a huge budget. I think it's $0
right here, right now.
Is what I'm
gonna send. I'll sign this baby and send out.
Yeah, conviction. Ed, conviction was the fourth C that he gave us.
It was a good one though.
Yeah, I was, you see how I did that? I was trying to do that, talk about my buddy, and then also make sure I looked it up real quick because it was a great answer. I loved it. But hey, those of you out there, hey, like Ed said, thumbs up, give us a thumbs up. With this YouTube channel. Keep listening though on the other platforms if you want. There's so much out there that you can do. I had a buddy, last name Thomas. Matt Thomas. We were sitting in class, and like out of the blue yesterday, Ed, Friday, he throws us a plug in the classroom. He's like, "Hey, you guys should listen to Weber's podcast." Is blah blah blah. He's like. And then all of a sudden, another one says, "Yeah, put it in our group chat." And I'm like,
I know.
"Okay, yeah, I'm just not used to doing that." I don't try to push.
And we were driving to we're doing a conference here. We were driving to kind of scope it out, and my captain, the civilian that works with us, she was like, "Oh yeah, what are some good podcasts?" And she's like, "Well, Massar has a podcast, so might be a new listener for Denise. Denise might be joining the Instinctive Influencers team." Yeah. So actually she'd be a good if I could get her, she'd be a good interview. Retired 05, and you know what? Loggy, now doing the civilian side. She'd probably be a pretty good. Yeah.
Maybe talk to her about like something that she's passionate about, and we can bring it up as a topic and then bring her on.
All right, buddy.
So. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, Ed, it was great, man. We ran into, so people aren't going to see it. We ran into some difficulties at the beginning. We worked through it, and we were actually able to finish our show like normal. Thank you very much, man. We did. There was a lot that happened today.
Yeah.
You got back from Munich.
Munchen.
They do the. Is it Munchen?
Munchen.
So you got back from there. Munchen.
Oh man.
You dealt with a lot of computer issues, and I just sat here and drank my coffee while I watched it.
All right,
but
let's do it.
So I'm gonna close it out, Ed. All right. Yeah. Oh, I have
do
to
need
first.
the
I have to
button.
find the button, buddy.
And that is,
If I don't do this right, you know, then
oh no, that's not it.
yeah, because people get all upset.
And I am
With that, I am Brian. And this has been the Instinctive Influencers podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. And don't forget, those leadership styles, you can use them all. Be a legend.